Hello and welcome to the Florida PBIS Administrator's Overview. This session is going to be recorded by myself, Lauren Ivanovich, and Robin Vanover. We are part of the Florida's Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Program, or FLPBIS. The purpose of this brief administrator overview is to learn about the FLPBIS MTSS project, help you understand your role as an administrator, distinguish between myths and facts about PBIS, what the role of school-based PBIS teams are, and how the district team provides support.
Let's get a little more specific about the Florida PBIS MTSS project. We have two co-directors, Dr. Heather George and Dr. Don Kincaid. So let us introduce who we are as a project and what our mission is and what we do. Our mission is to increase the capacity of Florida school districts to use team-based planning, problem solving to implement PBIS within that multi-tiered system of supports. We provide training, technical assistance to districts in the development and implementation of PBIS at the school-wide level, which includes the Tier 1 and classroom levels, the targeted group, or Tier 2, and individual students at Tier 3. We do this by engaging in coaching, evaluation, and data-based problem solving with district leaders to create systems that support effective PBIS practices. You can find our website at flpbis.org. Our website offers a ton of information and resources. We'll attempt to provide you with some navigational clues, but exploring on your own is probably the best way to become familiar with all we have to offer. If you're looking for something specific, try our search button located right in the middle of the page, or reach out to your district coordinator for further support if needed. The red arrows you see point to our main tabs located on our home page. Under the About tab, you will find information about PBIS, our mission and services, and Foundations will offer some information about PBIS in schools, MTSS, problem solving, effective data systems, PBIS values, and family community engagement. Next is the Coaching tab, which offers supports and resources for coaching at the district and school levels. Under the Tiers tab is information related to Tier 1, classroom supports, Tier 2, Tier 3, and recently added PTR, which stands for Prevent, Teach, and Reinforce. Other topics will provide you with ideas related to integration of initiatives such as climate and safety and mental health and well-being. Online learning provides you access to our recorded monthly TA chats and skill development modules. Lastly is our contact page. If you're interested in what the project has accomplished or statewide discipline data and training supports offered to districts, check out our annual report. The 2022-23 report will be released very soon. You might be wondering about PBIS from a national perspective, so we've included this slide indicating the number of U.S. schools using PBIS. The number of schools have been trending upward, but hit a bit of a speed bump during the pandemic years. You might be interested to know that PBIS is implemented internationally, like in the Czech Republic, Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, just to name a few. Here is what PBIS implementation looks like in the state of Florida. The green, you notice, are all of the active districts. PBIS is implemented at every grade level, including pre-K through high school. Alternative schools also find PBIS implementation helpful to reduce discipline issues on their campuses. When implemented with fidelity, PBIS leads to a variety of measurable outcomes. In Florida, the PBIS project recognizes schools for their efforts toward implementation of PBIS. Schools recognized must be trained and active with the project, exemplify high levels of PBIS implementation fidelity, demonstrate low discipline outcomes without significant disproportionality, and implement Tiers 2 and 3 in addition to Tier 1. Model schools must meet prerequisites, including a recommendation by their district coordinator, and then complete an application. More details can be found by visiting the Model School page on our website.
So, what is Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, or PBIS? In order to answer that question, let's test your knowledge by playing a little game of myth or fact. I'm going to read a sentence, and you're going to take a moment to decide, is this a myth or fact? Let's get started. PBIS is a program. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? If you said myth, you are correct. PBIS is not a packaged program with a set script. It is a framework for building behavioral resources, increasing pro-social behavior, and enhancing school climate. This can be fit to whatever school or setting you're in as well. Let's try another one. The positive and positive behavior support means that we give out rewards. Is this a myth or fact? If you guessed myth, again, you would be correct. The positive refers to a change in focus from being reactive and punitive by responding to what students do wrong to being actually proactive instead and teaching and recognizing students when they engage in the appropriate behavior. PBIS creates a learning environment where students, staff, and families feel appreciated, safe, and respected. Reinforcers or rewards serve as a teaching tool and assist staff in focusing on pro-social behavior and support students in making better choices. For more myths and facts, you can find these hyperlinked here or on our website. Consider how you might use these handouts. We've had some administrators play this game with their staff and faculty, board members, parents, students, and the broader community. Consider sharing this information with your stakeholders as a way to educate them and gain their support. So now that we know PBIS is a framework, not a program, let's explore more about how PBIS is defined. In order to experience positive behavioral outcomes, we need a systems-level approach that includes using data and effective science-based practices. PBIS is an evidence-based, three-tiered framework to improve and integrate all of the data, systems, and practices affecting students' outcomes every day. PBIS creates schools that support everyone for success, including students with disabilities. Just like MTSS for academics, PBIS, or the behavioral arm of MTSS, addresses behavioral supports for all students. Some students will need supplemental supports, about 10 to 15% of your student population, and a few students will need individual supports, or Tier 3, including 1 to 5% of your student population. Think about your reading curriculum. We teach reading to all students, Tier 1, great curriculum, but some need supplemental supports, Tier 2, and few will need individual supports, Tier 3. We identify students in needs of Tier 2 or 3 supports by engaging in the problem-solving process. More on using data to make decisions will be coming later. The core of PBIS is a framework that incorporates strategies from a wide range of programs and initiatives, things like anti-bullying, drug abuse prevention, mental health and wellness, climate, attendance, and so on. Schools that are implementing PBIS with fidelity are selecting strategies that reflect the core principles of the field. Those principles are listed here on the slide. There are some ideas that may be new to practitioners. PBIS strategies are developed by those who will be affected by them. This means that PBIS teams, or you as a new member, must reach out to the rest of your staff, as well as to your students and families, to identify school-wide strategies that will be incorporated into your school framework. PBIS strategies respect the dignity of all individuals. PBIS teams must take a strengths-based approach to understanding and supporting their students, families, and colleagues. What we mean here is that team members should avoid blaming students and families for poor performance and outcomes. You'll want to shift your focus to the things that you can control, like intervention fidelity and environmental variables. This also means that teams coach others to recognize the strengths of students and families and build on those strengths to improve student performance. The final point of respecting the dignity of all individuals is that strategies are designed with those who will be impacted them as opposed to or for them. PBIS teams recognize the dignity of students and families by including them in decisions that are designed to impact them. A note here on shame-based strategies and strategies that take away rewards earned by students. They are actually inconsistent with PBIS principles. This goes back to respecting the dignity of all individuals and focusing on positive life changes and increased social belonging. Shaming a student for a behavioral error violates their dignity and does nothing to help them make positive lifestyle changes or increase their connectedness to the school community. Taking away a reward that was earned by a student erases their accomplishment and sends the message that even if they do something well, the impact of their positive change could be rendered meaningless if they make another mistake. That last point is really important. It goes to the core of PBIS and represents a significant shift in mindset for many educators. PBIS foundational systems include a multi-tiered approach. You've heard us talk about all of these tiers already, so we want to break it down just a little bit more. Tier 1 teams represent what we do for all students. The team meets regularly to review data and engage in the problem-solving process. You'll do this by analyzing data to determine what's working and what elements of your implementation plan need adjusting, such as reteaching expectations and rules, making sure your action plan is developed by the team, that it's ongoing and fluid. As a school, you may develop different teams to focus on and provide supports at various tiers. Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams are often responsible for identifying students in need of supplemental or individual supports and choosing the best interventions for students. Teams need to have behavioral expertise on the team and the ability to analyze and collect progress monitoring data. The teams are responsible for ensuring fidelity of intervention implementation and evaluation data as well. The level and extent of PBIS implementation continues to grow. In addition to the impact on academic achievement or improved student outcomes, other benefits include positive behavioral outcomes, reduced rates of bullying and exclusionary discipline, and we see an impact on teachers as well. So perception of teacher efficacy, of school health and climate, and perception of school safety. All of these have improved outcomes with the implementation of school-wide positive behavioral interventions and supports. PBIS has 10 critical elements, and they are identified here within the green slices of the pie. Things like establishing a team, effective discipline systems, faculty commitment, school-wide expectations and rules, lesson plans for teaching behavior, etc., all play an important role. PBIS is not about planning the next reward party. That's just 1/10 of your framework. Recognizing students for following rules and expectations have been shown to be effective in reducing office discipline referrals. Imagine going to work every day and not ever receiving feedback as to how you're doing. When we reinforce students and recognize their efforts to follow rules and expectations, then we will see improved behavioral outcomes, feedback plays a big role in that. These 10 critical elements work together to create the Tier 1 framework. What you notice in the blue around the pie are enhancements that are integrated into our approach to support students. These enhancements include becoming trauma-informed, aware of mental wellness needs, family engagement, etc. Building and sustaining relationships with our key stakeholders will yield a higher rate of return and lead to a positive school climate when implemented.
Let's talk about the goals of PBIS implementation. These are the overarching goals of PBIS. Recognizing the need for systems change will help with sustainability by improving environments. One example is adding arrows to the flow on our floors to improve the flow of traffic in our hallways at our schools. That's an overall system-wide change to help promote safety. Improving teacher-student-family relationships. Let them know that their voice matters. We improve academic outcomes and enhance school safety. Our goal is also to improve those social behavioral outcomes, making our students or helping our students to become more aware and developing their own relationships. And ultimately, our goal is to reduce and prevent problem behaviors.
So what needs to happen to become a PBIS school? By engaging in a process of partnering with stakeholders and engaging in critical self-reflection to help evolve current mindsets related to supporting student behavior, to identify changes in practice over time that will enable schools to achieve important outcomes. By doing this, we will develop an integrated, contextually relevant PBIS system that is a process, and it requires you as school members to build authentic partnerships with your students, families, and your broader community members.
It's important to know that implementation of PBIS can certainly take some time. What we notice for schools implementing is that it can take 3 to 5 years to really implement a comprehensive system in which we're seeing some impact on change with those respect to outcomes. This also requires district and school level administrative support. It also requires an effective, committed, school-based PBIS team. One suggestion that I might have for you is when soliciting members for the school-based team, that we look for people with a variety of different skill sets, and then also personnel that come from a variety of different backgrounds. We want to make sure that our team members have a commitment to being on that team. This also sometimes presents a philosophical change for staff and families. So many folks are used to that traditional approach to discipline that we have a hard time kind of shifting over to that preventative mode. PBIS implementation requires the use of an effective data-based problem-solving process. And while we're talking about a data-based problem-solving process, we need to make sure that we have an effective database in place so that we can capture the appropriate data and look at graphs over time.
Some keys to success when you're thinking about PBIS implementation is first to remember that PBIS is not a quick fix. It will take time and commitment. But as an administrator, your support and the role you play in the development is key. The District Leadership Team, or DLT, provides the policy change, funding supports, and builds workforce capacity for schools implementing PBIS. As the school level administrator, your commitment again is essential for success and ongoing implementation. You need to have the active commitment and support for your PBIS team and implementation. The PBIS school-based team must work collaboratively to effectively develop an implementation plan that yields positive student outcomes, thinking about faculty commitment and buy-in. That staff and faculty commitment to the process is essential to ensure fidelity of implementation of teaching and reinforcing appropriate behavior and building those relationships with students, families, and other key stakeholders. District and schools must have an effective and efficient data system to progress monitor, analyze discipline data, and evaluate implementation strategies. And finally, a key to success is making sure that we have contextual fit with school culture and school improvement plan so that you can best support all of your staff, student, family, and community members with their input for their culture and support their successful implementation.
You are not alone with this work. We, as a project, rely on the Center on PBIS to provide us with research and guidance on PBIS implementation. The Florida project supports the district leadership team by engaging in data analysis, action planning, and coaching. The district provides support to schools and the PBIS team, and schools engage and support staff, families, and community members. This is also our flow of communication. The district leadership team has a variety of different functions. It includes district-level staff that have the ability to impact PBIS implementation. Their function is to engage key stakeholders, secure funding, and align policy to be consistent with PBIS practices, to build the capacity to ensure personnel are in place to support the work. The team will develop an annual plan that includes coaching, training, and evaluation.
So what does it actually take to become a highly successful district? Here's what we know from research. First of all, we need to identify a district coordinator, or DC, that has been trained in PBIS. Each district has a technical assistance specialist from the Florida PBIS project that's assigned to provide support, resources, and training. Communication between the FLPBIS TA and the DC streamlines efforts and provides a source of information from which the DC shares with the leadership team and the school-based coach or point of contact. That brings us to our second piece, coaches. Coaches or point of contacts provide school-based leadership and play a key role as a PBIS team member. The point of contact or coach receives information from the district coordinator. As a result of district team activities, leadership, buy-in, and data, infrastructure, support to schools, and communication, these activities, which are supported and included within that district action plan reviewed yearly, these goals are then in alignment with the desired student outcomes and improved evaluation results. You can see more information on high-performing districts, which are identified by high implementation fidelity of PBIS across school years and schools, and improved student outcomes with this white paper.
The district leadership team is responsible for attending the annual YIP meeting, or Yearly Implementation Plan. Throughout that plan, you will notice different activities that the team will choose to impact positive outcomes at the district level. Some of the things that are reviewed are implementation goals for behavior. We look at the measurements and tools used to collect such data to make sure that everything is aligning properly. We look at the evaluation effectiveness. And then we also look at school and district coaches to support the PBIS implementation plan. What kinds of resources or PD will our coaches need next year? What kinds of PD or professional development will our school level teams need? Is it time to scale up? Or have we had so much turnover in staff that we need to really start some retraining in Tier 1? We'll also be looking at progress monitoring of discipline and academic data side by side. And we use our PBIS evaluation tools in order to accomplish this. Let's take a little bit of a closer look as to the school-based PBIS team and the members that we'd like to have on that team, and then also some of the brief responsibilities. 6 to 8 members seems to be a pretty good number. Obviously, if you are a larger school district or a larger campus, you might want to include a few more, but I think the key are the attendees and the roles they play and making sure that everyone has those responsibilities so they can contribute. As we've mentioned already, the school administrator, you, the people that we're talking to during this overview, are a must. Please understand how important your role is. We know that oftentimes the school administrator gets bogged down with so many different responsibilities. So if you, as the school administrator, maybe you're the principal or the assistant principal, consider a dean if they play an administrative role. I think it's just important that somebody with an administrative level be able to be on that team in order to make some really key decisions. And some of those decisions are professional development for the rest of the staff. Maybe it's funding for some resources that are needed, etc. We also want to make sure that we have a mix of general and special education teachers, your school counselor or behavior expert. Remember to include paraprofessionals. Sometimes we develop some ad hoc committees that are family members and students. They may not necessarily come to the PBIS team meeting. Maybe they meet outside of that team, but there is a responsibility of somebody else on the team to bring forth that information and to share stakeholder voice. Some of the responsibilities are to develop, implement, and evaluate the school's plan and get input from staff and all stakeholders. It's important the team monitor behavior data and implementation progress. They maintain communication with staff and families, and they hold those monthly meetings to review and develop the action plan. The action plan is very fluid and should be discussed at every monthly meeting.
Now that we know who should be a part of our school-based PBIS team, let's talk about the administrator's responsibilities. This is an administrator overview. After all, the administrator assigned to the PBIS team, aka you, must be fully committed and present during PBIS team meetings. We know that this is difficult, but without this support, it is extremely difficult to implement and sustain PBIS. The role of the administrator is sometimes the principal, like Robin said, assistant principal, or dean. Commitment is an essential quality, along with the desire to improve the school climate and reduce disciplinary actions at your school. Responsibilities of the school administrator as a team member include develop, implement, and evaluate the school's PBIS plan with input from your staff and other stakeholders. That means actively communicate with all stakeholders for implementation on your campus. Be an active team member. Understand your school's behavioral data system and help to monitor the data and implementation progress. Ensure that behavior is written into your school improvement plan, specifically around PBIS and your Tier 1 implementation plans. And this big one, where you can identify and allocate resources to support implementation, including that all-important staff time for PBIS activities.
Go. So what does PBIS look like? Maybe you're a new administrator on this campus, or maybe you just want to know more about PBIS, and that's why you're listening to this overview. So we want to just share some quick points of reference for you. Your campus should have expectations and rules posted, and they should have been developed by the staff as well as key stakeholders. We want to make sure that all adults, visitors, and our students are aware of those expectations and rules. And the way that we do that is to teach them. Ask for lesson plans, look for lesson plans. Are they developed and being implemented? Do you have a standard curriculum that you're using, or were they created within the school environment specific to your school? We want to make sure that we're reinforcing our students and our adults for following those expectations and rules. The reinforcement might look different from school to school or from grade level to grade level. It doesn't mean always that we're handing out tokens or any other kind of tangible item, but we're making sure that we are communicating to our staff and to our students and to our visitors that they are following our expectations and rules, and we appreciate it. Looking for an effective discipline process and procedures that have been developed to match the school's climate and culture are important. Making sure that there are procedures that are consistently implemented by all staff is another key point. Implementing PBIS doesn't mean we don't have consequences. We do have consequences. We're hoping that our Tier 1 implementation is taking on a huge preventative role, but when there is a need for consequences, we're relying on a hierarchy of consequences that have been developed and agreed upon. We oftentimes look to the code of conduct, of course, to make sure that we are following our board-approved rules. And lastly, we want to talk a little bit about the data system. You need to have an effective data system that allows for timely collection of behavioral data and allows for analysis that leads to problem solving. Once we have problem solved and we've developed a plan, we've worked through the 4-step problem solving process, we should be able to see those positive outcomes and the results of our plan.
Here are some PBIS things to know. We provided infographics with more information that can be used to build understanding amongst stakeholders. The bullets on this slide give the big ideas for each of the handouts. The handouts provide more details about all of those points. PBIS is a research-based initiative. There are literally hundreds of peer-reviewed studies supporting the positive impact of PBIS. Implementing PBIS with fidelity has resulted in higher academic performance, improved social and behavioral competence, reduced bullying, reduced substance abuse, and better outcomes for students with disabilities. Implementation of PBIS is shown to lower schools' rates of exclusionary discipline and restraint and seclusion, and helps to increase teacher efficacy, school climate, and perceptions of safety. The second infographic of PBIS is a different way of supporting student behavior when we're thinking about traditional versus PBIS. Traditional approaches to behavior management are usually reactive, happening only after a situationally inappropriate behavior occurs. Traditional methods focus on stopping the problem behavior, often through those shame-based strategies that chip away at student and school community and connections. Conversely, PBIS is proactive, using data to predict when situationally inappropriate behaviors are most likely to occur, then using that data to provide the prevention strategies and the conditions that lead to the behavior, including teaching the students skills so that they can be more successful under those conditions, and designing incentives so that the students has a reason for trying something new. With PBIS, we're shifting the focus away from the student of being the problem to things in our environment that can be manipulated so that the, quote, problem behavior becomes irrelevant and unnecessary. And finally, the PBIS is a framework for integrating all behavior supports. This is great news, as it means we're not handing teachers yet another thing to do. Part of the responsibility of you on the PBIS team is to integrate behavior initiatives so they are delivered as part of the school's Tier 1 PBIS framework. Another point to make is that PBIS strategies are consistent with many of the priorities educators manage throughout the year: improving attendance, teaching academic enabling skills, building a positive school climate, improving student-family-teacher relationships, building a system that supports these, all a part of PBIS. The 10 critical elements defining your Tier 1 system are described in the slide previously. These are the 2 current data system resources the Florida PBIS project provides for foundations and effective data systems. We provide PBSES database to help the school and district engage in annual evaluation. This is where teams enter their mid and end year evaluations. That's on the left in the blue circles. On the right, you'll see in green RTIB. RTIB is a free statewide data system intended to capture discipline offenses, teacher-managed and office-managed referrals, and actions taken as a result of the discipline incident. Districts may have a different data system used to capture that same information, and that's completely okay. We're going to take the next section to talk through both of these and why they're important.
So speaking of data systems, the PBIS project thinks of data collection 2 different ways. We're looking at evaluation collection of data, and we're also looking at discipline collection of data. PBSES, or Positive Behavior Support Evaluation System, is accessible from our home page. And this is a database that helps us to better understand if we are implementing PBIS with fidelity. So we're looking at what improvements do we need to make. Are we reaching the desired outcomes that's outlined in our YIP, basically? So the data are entered 3 times a year in the fall, spring, and end of year. So there is a PBS implementation checklist, there's a benchmarks quality, there is a Tier 1 walkthrough, and a tiered fidelity inventory, all of which are going to give you a pretty good idea of how you're implementing at all 3 tiers. The outcome data summary is entered after the last day of school, and this is a summary of all the data that's taken place as it relates to office discipline referrals, ISS, OSS. We break down the differences between general education and students with disabilities or students that have IEPs. So once we do this, we're able to analyze the effectiveness of our system and identify, do we need to make implementation changes over the next year? This is different than the data system that you are inputting on a regular basis or on a daily basis. Your internal system, or if you're using RTIB, our free data system, it allows personnel to track behavior, incidents, and discipline actions in real time by facilitating the problem-solving process in order to make adjustments from month to month or week to week. So some of the data that are entered regularly do include your office discipline referrals. You may be tracking your minor classroom incidents as well. And we're looking at the 5 big tools to help feed us that information of what kinds of implementation changes or interventions do we need to make. We're looking at the behavior of concern. We're looking at the location of the incident, the time of day. We're looking at what grade level. Are we experiencing more incidents from certain classrooms or in certain locations? Your data system should produce easy to read charts that can be shared at your monthly PBIS meetings in order to make implementation plan changes.
When reviewing team member roles and responsibilities, we mention analyzing discipline data and how we use data for making decisions as a team. It's time to take a closer look at what we actually meant by that. Here's the 4-step problem-solving process. It starts with step 1, defining the goal. This may help to start a discussion of what we see as the problem. Some questions to consider. Do our current outcomes meet or exceed expected levels? Is it true for all students? That really gets into our Tier 1, 2, or 3. What are our most common discipline, attendance, and climate concerns? Once we've defined our goal, we can move into step 2, analyze the problem. To do this, we need to gather a variety of data using the data sources available to us. Some of those are the benchmarks of quality, or BOQ, the fidelity of specific Tier 1 interventions, evidence of PBIS implementation in the classroom, school and classroom climate, potentially surveys. This will help us to answer the problem of, is this a school-wide problem, a class problem, or narrowing it down into those Tier 2 and Tier 3 support questions. Step 3 is develop and implement a plan. So using the data collected in Step 2 and our goal that we've defined in Step 1, we use our knowledge of best practice, and we want to think about what interventions might we put in place to reach our goal. What resources do we have to implement the intervention? How do we communicate with stakeholders our intervention plan? And what is the process to ensure fidelity of implementation? And finally, Step 4 is to make sure it works. Here we're going to examine the data used to identify the problem. So we go back to the same data we got in Step 2 to make sure that our intervention is working. Did we experience positive outcomes or not? How do we know that? If not, why not? And what might we do about it? We communicate these outcomes back to our stakeholders and solicit feedback. Then we start with our process all over again. We're going to spend a little bit of time in the PBSES data system. First, let's take a look at the district level reports. When you log in, this is not something you might be able to see at the school level, but we want you to know what's available and what your district can pull for you if necessary. This will be a unique login that your district coordinator or district level staff will have access to. This is an example of the PBSES district level report. This is the district dashboard. It provides a snapshot to the district leaders of the overall core effectiveness of the district's PBIS schools and lets leaders look at early warning indicators related to student outcomes and implementation needs to begin identifying strategic next steps. As a reminder, these data are pulled from your end of the year submissions of your benchmarks of quality, outcome data summary, tiered fidelity inventory, among others. An additional district level report that district leaders can look at is the early warning indicators. With a click of a tab, and they can identify and sort through the schools to identify who need additional supports with implementation or who are the schools experiencing disproportionate discipline outcomes so that they can align resources to maximize student outcomes. At the school level, this is good for you to know to be able to see where you compare or what you're looking at in your own district. Now let's take a look at the school level reports. This is the school level dashboard. It provides a snapshot to you as the school PBIS team of your overall core effectiveness of your PBIS system and at your early warning indicators as they relate to student outcomes and implementation needs so that you can begin to identify strategic next steps. Similarly to the two reports we just reviewed at the district level, you as the school have your own school dashboard that can allow you to walk through all of the information you have submitted. An additional school level report is to look at your PBIS implementation with fidelity. As a team, you can look at trends in your discipline data as part of the problem identification process. Here you can see PIC or PBIS implementation checklist, BOQ, benchmarks of quality, TFI, tiered fidelity inventory scores across multiple years for comparison. And finally, a report at the PBSES school level is asking if you have stable or improving outcomes for students. Here, as a team, you can look at trends in your discipline data as part of your problem identification process. You can see ODRs or office discipline referral rates, ISS in school suspension rates, and OSS, or out of school suspension rates, as they compare with Florida school type comparisons and percentages of 3-year change in your rates. So why do we really care about using PBSES? Well, it helps us to answer 2 basic questions. What are we doing, and is it working? Florida PBIS provides the data system and technical support to answer these questions. Based on your targeted needs, we will provide resources and coaching support to help improve your PBIS system and build capacity within your district and school. We won't be reviewing RTIB in detail during this brief overview, but if your district or school uses RTIB, please reach out to your administrator and district coordinator to schedule training.
We have some additional resources we'd like to recommend to you as an administrator. These are all hyperlinked, so feel free to click on them anytime and visit what it might mean to problem solve. What's the 4-step problem solving process all about? Or she just mentioned effective data systems. What should I be looking for? Is my data system effective? And what do we mean by climate and safety? So these are some key bullets that oftentimes administrators are most concerned about, and we encourage you to check it out. So do you still have questions? You do have a PBIS district coordinator that provides support to your school. So please reach out to that district coordinator. The district coordinator is always free to contact us at the project if they cannot answer any of your specific questions. This concludes the overview of PBIS for administrators. We thank you for watching and hope we address some key information you will use as an administrator. We know how busy you are and we appreciate you. And finally, our contact information. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and check out our YouTube videos. We want to really thank you for joining us today and for having an interest, donating your time to your PBIS team, and really getting in there to learn about your team member role and how you can contribute and collaborate within your school environment. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can reach out to your district PBIS coordinator. And remember the search button on our homepage in the middle of the screen. That will help you if you need to search and review any of our other topics in more detail. So thanks again for joining us.